What's up, guys? Alpha 5 here, coming to you from the Rangers Dojo, also known as Stents. And I've got on the deck profile for you guys. This is Light Fire Nature Aggro. This is a donation deck. This deck is really interesting, and I like the core premise of this, but it needs some tuning. Um, it's 45 cards in an aggro deck. I would have liked to see it be a little bit smaller, a little bit more refined. And if you notice, every single card in this deck is a 2 of, except for the 1 tech copy of Blaze Helix. Sorry. To me, that seems like this person had a lot of cool ideas, but wasn't exactly sure where to go with them. Which, trust me, I feel that. Um, so, let's get right into the deck. In the future, we're thinking about doing videos where we take some of our donation decks or take some of our older decks and kind of tune them up and make adjustments. Let us know in the comments if that's something you guys would be interested in. So, for the deck profile, first we'll start with 2 Luminous Shieldwing. I really like this card as an aggro card because it's a card that you're not punished as much for swinging. I think it combos better with blue, something like Cyberlord Corile, because then you can kind of cycle it and replay it and replay it and cycle it. But it's a strong vanilla enforcer that lets you kind of be aggressive with less drawback. In an aggro deck, I would have preferred maybe what is it, Shimmerfly, I think, something like that. The 2 mana 1000 when it dies tap something, because that allows your other dudes to attack, but this is also very powerful. This is, I think, just better in mid-range, though. It does help in the aggro matchup a lot, so that's good to keep in mind. Next, we got 2 Metal Max. Metal Max is a good vanilla dual civ beater. This deck has a lot of dual civs. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, it's 14. So, when I build decks, I try to keep it to around 10 or below because you break draw so often, and that's really, really bad for your just mana progression. But you know, if it works, it works. Like I said, maybe with 45 cards, it doesn't break as often, but I personally would keep this around 10 to 12 at the absolute max. Um, but yeah, Metal Max is really good evolution bait, and it's just a vanilla beat stick. So, I mean, there's a lot of value. I do like the fact that there's so many 2-drops in an aggro deck. You absolutely need an early game. Some people only run 6 copies of some 2-drops, or that's a bad way to phrase that. Some people only run 6 2-drops, whether that's 2x3 or 3x2 or whatever. And that's just not enough because if you don't get that aggressive start, then you're really not doing what your deck is supposed to, and then your opponent establishes an early blocker lead, early board control, and you're just on the back foot the whole game. Anyway, next, 2 Pouncing Crickets. Shield Blast Megabug. Megabug isn't really relevant, but it's a Shield Blast creature, and it lets you kind of go on the swing back. Honestly, this is the worst 2-drop in the deck. I would prefer to see this as anything else. In an aggro deck, if you start losing the board, unless you're in like a rush matchup, you're probably not winning anyway. And there's only 2 green evolution creatures in the deck, one of which requires Beastkin. So I don't like this card too much in this context, but it's a powerful card, and I see why it's in here. Next, Weaponized Razorcat, biggest beat stick in the game at this mana cost. 2 mana 4K, Stomper and Beastkin. Beastkin's relevant because you can put the Shaman of the Villager on it. I mean, what more is there to say? This thing is potent. This thing runs over literally everything else at its mana cost, with a few notable exceptions, such as Aqua Strider. And it really just helps you maintain control of the board every single turn. Getting this thing down, I would love to see this at 3. This is an incredible card to have at 3. Next, we got 2 Battle Breads. This card is slept on. The problem a lot of competitive players had back in the old days was if you're playing a more mid-range or defensive game, the lemon is always better because you can get more mana more quickly and you can kind of outpace an aggro opponent or keep pace with a ramp deck. But if you're playing a more aggressive or rush deck, like you'd rather just have the body because this requires having an evolution creature on the board to be good. But with the way this deck is built, with the Torhelms and Blinder Beetle Prime and the Roll Core, this lets you justify some really crazy aggressive swings for way more shields than you should be able to break at that time. The other downside to this, however, is if you've been aggressive the entire game like the deck is supposed to be, chances are the difference between a double and a triple breaker won't matter that much, but it's still a really, really good card, and it helps you really fight back against some of the more controlling decks. So, I love this card. I think I would have also liked to see this at 3. Next, I see two Sword Horns, same as the Razor Cat. Super good, incredible body. I really like evolving. I really don't like evolving Shaman of the Vigil onto the Sword Horns, just because it feels like a lateral move. It's 6 mana invested in a 55k. I would rather revolve it onto a Shield Wing or a Metal Max, but there's not exactly enough Enforcer bait to get that evolution often. So, something to think about. Next, 2 Krakus. This is a really hard card to use because it's slow, so you have to have a time when your opponent's kind of either not playing blockers or going into a blocker turn, and you're not going into a critical turn yourself, where you can put this down, and then you pretty much never attack with it, because it's so important. The difference between your opponent's blockers coming down tapped so you can value trade them versus coming down in play and threatening your whole board is immense. And this thing shuts down Luminous Shield Wing on the other side of the board. It shuts down Andromeda Shield Regen. It shuts down Cobalt. Krakus has a lot of value, and is not something that you should really risk exposing it to the clapback hits from like a bigger blocker or like a major AO or something. But yeah, it's extremely valuable, and it's a really important card. I would love to see this at 3. Scrappy Hunter. I'm pretty sure this is just in here for the aggro matchup, as well as evolution bait. Unfortunately, if someone's breaking your shields in this matchup, you're either really losing, or you're going to blow them out because they're giving you hand advantage and you're still going to the face. So, I don't think it's very good in this deck, but I think I'm happy to see it. Because, again, we've got so many evolution creatures here that just having more evo bait isn't necessarily a bad thing. Next, we get 2 Tricky Turnips, similar to the Krakus. Don't swing with this unless you absolutely have to, or you've got a second one that you're not swinging with. This is because this thing is guaranteed evolution bait, and you always swing with it last to guarantee that you have something that the Shield Blast can't touch unless it's a Storm Spark or something else AoE. Turnip has long been one of the best cards in the game, and it was arguably the best card to come out of the Evasion Earth set, and also one of like 5 good cards to come out of Evasion Earth. So it's a super valuable card. Again, would love to see this at 3. Next, 2 Blitzermech Falcora. People called this Shock and Awe with a body, but also with fast attack. I really like this card. I think it's a really fun card. I'm not sure how well it fits in this deck because A, we're already flooded with multi-civ cards, and B, most of our attacking is going to be coming from bigger stuff. So having this on 4 as opposed to an evolution creature that you could be playing on 4 just feels kind of weird. This might have been something that I would cut, but it's hard to say without like actually going through and deciding. Steam Tank Cryon. I really love this card. I think there's a lot of really, really cool combo potentials with this card. And I think that this card is very good with all the low-cost dudes that we have in here. But the problem is there's no draw support for this deck. So, yes, you could create an army of low-cost dudes after you put it down, but after you put it down, your hand's probably at between 1 and 3 cards anyway, so you're just top-decking for small dudes when you should be playing evolution creatures. So the Cryon doesn't get as much utility as it probably should. Again, it's something I might cut, just looking at the multi-civ ratio and looking at its place in the mana curve. After turn 4, we absolutely just want to be slapping evolution creatures down every turn. So, there's that. Oh, amendment. I forgot Roll Core does technically draw you one. So I guess there is a tiny bit of draw support in this deck. Next, we'll move to the evolution creatures. 2 Torhelm. This is a crazy good card for aggressive decks. The fact that it can attack untapped creatures on the turn that it shows up, it means that I can take out that pesky Aqua Strider or whatever and trade over it. Upgrade A. Oh, jeez, I'm terribly sorry. Ah, pardon me. It's very early morning when I'm recording this. Um, it can upgrade a vanilla body, such as a Scrap Heap Hunter or a Razor Cat or a Metal Max very easily, or even a Warchief Kyo. Um, and then the fact that when it dies, or I'm sorry, when it becomes the target of a spell or ability, it breaks shield, just gives it even more utility. Your opponent just feels bad for killing it, no matter what they do, almost. Next, Shaman of the Vigil. This card's really good, but I don't think its abilities do as much as it would in a different kind of deck. And what I mean by that is, in like a light nature aggro deck, Shaman of the Vigil is insane because you've got so many weenies and like small dudes that they they swing and then they're really vulnerable, like the Shield Wings or the Shimmerfly and stuff like that. I think that's that card's name. I'll have to look that up later. Um, that are 1,000 power, and when your opponent gets to dictate what trades that they take as opposed to you dictating them because you're attacking, they get way worse. This keeps them all safe, and the giving Beastkins protector, because Beastkin are usually a bit more aggressively statted, is also exceptionally valuable because again it lets you kind of dictate trades a little bit easier on your opponent's turn. But there's not that many Beastkin in this deck. It's just the Battlebred, the Cat, and the Swordhorns. Um, and while that can be good, you're not going to see all three in one game typically because these games are going to go pretty fast in this deck. And in terms of enforcers to untap, like Shield Wing's a good target. Metal Max is bigger than most blockers. Uh, Battlebred's not probably attacking. Swordhorns is bigger than pretty much half the blockers in the game, or at least at that cost. Blitzer Mech isn't an enforcer. Arbiter, we don't care really because it's so big. You can untap a Blinder Beetle Prime later in the game, but like Blinder Beetle Prime's really big, and the whole point of Blinder Beetle Prime is you can kind of value trade over your opponent's stuff anyway when it comes down. So Shaman's good, but it doesn't. Shaman's a super good card, but it doesn't do very much in this deck. Um, Restless Conflag. Uh, this is a really fun card, and I love the fact that it says your opponent chooses because it gets around a lot of can't be targeted abilities. The most relevant, obviously, is Eternal Haven, but I'm gonna be honest. If you get to this point and your opponent is playing Eternal Haven and you're playing a Restless Conflagration, this game is not yours, my friend. Like it's too late in the game. Um, but it's a 4 mana 6,000 double breaker, so Uh, that's the tempo play that we absolutely need in this kind of aggressive evolution-based aggro deck. So I really like this. I would potentially put this at 3. Um, oh, point of order with the Torhelm. I almost forgot. Um, it really needs 1-drops to be successful. If there aren't red 1-drops, Torhelm is not nearly as nice of a value as it is because being able to play Torhelm on curve is so nutty. Um, moving on, Blinder Beetle Prime. This is the best evolution creature in the game. No cap. If you really need me to explain why Blinder Beetle Prime is absolutely amazing, drop something down in the comments and I'll happily break it down for you, but I've talked about it in so many videos at this point. Blinder Beetle Prime is incredible. It's almost bannable, it's so good. So I'm just going to move on. It's very good. Magistrate Jazuri, I love this card. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it's incredible in draft. If you're ever drafting Kaijudo and you draft this card, like, wow, you're going to have a good time. For those who aren't aware, 6 mana, 85, 8,500 power, blocker, which is relevant, uh, double breaker, and then unleash. At the end of your turn, untap all your dudes. So it's similar to Shaman of the Vigilant. In fact, it does everything Shaman of the Vigilant does a little bit better. However, I think that 6 is too high of a curve for this deck. I would like to see this deck curve out at 5. If it's going to be this aggressive, I think 6 as a top end is too slow, and there's going to be too many dead cards in your hand. Also, being able to untap your board at this point, if you've still got a board by turn 6 in this aggro deck, the game is yours. Like, you should have won. Or, alternatively, your opponent has a butt ton of blockers that are bigger than your whole board, and you can't swing with them anyway. So, being able to untap them all doesn't do anything for you. The fact that it's a beefy blocker is very valuable, but is not really what we're looking for at the moment. Uh, Next, we'll move on to Beast Lord Rollcore. This thing is super, super critical of this deck because we have so many evolution creatures and so much bait. So, it pretty much always gets its gets its search on both targets, the evolution and the small 3 or less guy, and it keeps your aggro train rolling. This is an absolute must 3 of. This thing needs to be 3 copies because it's the only draw on your deck, and if you putter out of steam, you're just gonna slow down and your opponent will very likely stabilize. This is the only card that makes me think, okay, maybe curving out at 6 is okay for this deck. But it's probably the only card in the game that can make me think that. Next, 2 Containment Field. This is better than Stormspark Blast in an aggro deck. Yes, it targets, but honestly, that's fine. When you're flooding the board with bodies, Containment Field does what Stormspark Blast does, except you can actually play Containment Field from hand, and Stormspark Blast you'll almost never play from hand. So, probably 90% of the time it's way better. Root Trap. Good defensive tool. I might have preferred to see Return to the Soil here, because, again, you need to be able to play it, and if you're getting to the point where you have to mana things that are, or you have to put cards in your opponent's mana zone that are really big, either your evolution creatures should be the ones getting over it, or it's too late. Stormspark Blast. Like I said, would prefer to see this as just more Containment Field, but it's one of the best, if not the best defensive spell in the game. Blaze Helix. It's like Stormspark Blast, except it kills blockers. It also lets your dudes attack untapped creatures, which, while it can be valuable if you want to control the board, why are you controlling the board? Hit him in the face. It's like, this is an aggro deck. Sometimes, like in the aggro mirror, that's how you win, by playing board control, but hit your opponent in the face. They can't clap back against you if they're dead, right? Arbiter, more evolution bait. I'm happy to see it, but it's unlikely that it goes off. Usually it just sits dead in your hand and is an easy mana decision. It's fine at 2. I don't think there needs to be a third. I can see it at 1. If we are like really desperate on space, we could maybe just make it a Tech Arbiter and 3 Containment Fields. Because again, people shouldn't be hitting your shields unless you're in the aggro match, or unless you're in the rush matchup, or the aggro mirror. And if that's the case, you've got plenty of shield blasts already, and you just have big dudes on board, and that will probably like dissuade your opponent from attacking anyway. Final card in the deck, Warchief Kyo. This card pairs well with all of our overstated dudes, like the Razorcat, the Metalmax, the Swordhorned, all of the evolution creatures. But I think it's just kind of neat. It doesn't win you games. Yes, it lets you dictate a trade, but it's not where we need to be. So with that said, Warchief Kyo is another one that I find myself cutting in a lot of decks, unless it's really combat focused, we'll say. There have been some fun decks I've been playing around with Thunderaxe Shaman, and Thunderaxe Shaman says it's kind of like Starseed Squadron. It's a red-green 4 mana 4000. When this card's on the board, anything that has 6000 power has Double Breaker, and when one of your creatures wins a battle, all of your other creatures gain 2000 power until the end of the turn. So it really benefits from having a lot of fights and trades and stuff like that. But outside of that, or something maybe like Lepidus the Ancient, that whenever one of your creatures wins a battle, it'll mana one of your opponent's shields. The shield blast can't go off. That's valuable as well, but that's about it. Kyo doesn't do a whole lot. Oh, Krogan Blazing Devastation, the 8 mana 9000 dragon, also has some utility with Kyo, but again, it's about it. It doesn't do a whole lot. At least not for what this deck is trying to accomplish. It's coming down too late to do anything. So, with that said, that'll be the end of this deck profile. This is Light Fire Nature Donation Aggro. This is not something that we created, but it's something we could definitely have a lot of fun fixing it up in the future. I really like this deck. I would have loved to see more 3-ofs. This seems very indecisively built. Like, maybe I want this, maybe I want that, maybe I want this, maybe... and with 45 cards, like, sometimes you just have to be hard on yourself and think, what is this deck trying to do? and cut the things that are just neat ideas as opposed to like actually how you win the game. With this said, play for fun. If this is like your just kind of local pet project, then whatever. But it's we'll say so. This we'll say it's not quite optimized yet. Um, so with that, I'm going to sign off. Hope you guys enjoyed. This is Alpha 5 from the Rangers Dojo. See you guys next time.